Good morning.
Good morning.
As you just heard, my name is Mason. I'm with Young Entertainment Mag. If you could please tell a moment to tell our readers who you are.
My name is Ilana Peña. I am the creator and showrunner of Diary of a Future President.
Awesome. So, first, I guess I want to ask, where do you get your inspiration for some of these stories? They have a personal connection or a connection to those close to you?
Elena is very much inspired by me when I was younger, but we also have a really incredible, diverse writers' room that brings their own stories to the table. And there's sort of nothing more fun than sitting around with a bunch of grown-ups and talking about our traumas and fears and victories of when we were in 7th grade or 9th grade. So a lot of these stories, if not all of them, are inspired by something that either happened to me, happened to a writer, happened to a friend, and approaching all of them from a place of honesty, I think, is what makes it so universal.
Those writing room sessions sound like a heck of a time. If I might ask, was there like a moment you could think of in like a session that just made everybody take a breath or take a beat? Something shared, something brought up?
I think a lot of everyone really related to this idea we explore in the first episode this season of the summer reset. This idea that between 6th and 7th grade summers or just middle school summers, everything like vastly changes. And you go in with your notion of like, this is what it's going to be. I tackled 6th grade. It's going to be okay. And then it's like it's like as if they're being played by different actors. It's not just sitting at different lunch tables. They look different. They like different things. They're wearing different clothes because that's when everyone's really coming into their own. And everyone kind of had a story of like, what the summer reset looked like for them. And that's why we put a name to it, because it was this idea that we all had. And then one of our writers, Keith, was like, it's the summer reset. And we were like, let's name it. Let's call it something so we know so future kids can call it something.
Very cool. So, on the subject of working with other writers, if there was one writer in particular you could work with in a similar genre to this show, who would it be and why? Someone you'd think, man, I'd really want to work with them.
In a similar genre to this show, well, I like grew up watching Lizzie McGuire. And Lizzie McGuire very much influenced Diary of a Future President. So if I could, work with the creator of Lizzie McGuire, maybe have cartoon Lizzie giving Elena some advice, I think that would be really great.
That sounds like it would be a very cool scene to see.
Right? Let's manifest it.
Let's see here. So I guess another thing is, if you were to give some advice to someone pursuing writing for a TV show, what would you tell them? Something you wish you had known starting out?
That's a great question. I thought when I was starting out that there was something that this industry needed me to be. And I really wanted to hit that mark and be that thing. And I learned that this is very corny, but it's true, that thing is myself. So I was kind of like seeking, like, okay, I'll write this kind of thing. I'll be this kind of writer. When I fully embraced that the most me was the stories I had to tell, Diary came out of me and the show was born. So embrace the stories that you have to tell. You are the only person who can tell your stories. And it doesn't have to be autobiographical, but tell them from a place of honesty. And then people will be saying, oh my God, no one else can tell this story like you. So that's my advice.
That sounds like some very good advice. Was there a moment, if you can like think of one, I know it might not just be one moment, but if there was something that crystallized that for you, that made you realize that yourself?
I worked on the TV show on the CW, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I came into that show as an assistant, and my bosses there were these amazing women, Rachel Bloom and Aline Brosh McKenna, and they loved everything that I brought to the table, and they weren't expecting me to be anything else. And so I was able to be nurtured and promoted and honestly just supported by these women for being myself. And they saw me not as an assistant, not as like a cog in the machine, but as a person and as a writer and as somebody with stories to tell. And so I made it my mission to do the same for others.
Very cool. Let's see here. So is there like anything in the writer's room, going back to that for a moment? Actually, you know what? I got one other thing that I'm just dying to ask. If you had your own diary about working on this show, what would you think would make the first entry? Could be a picture, could be a sentence. What would hop onto that first page?
That first page, that's such a good question, Mason. On that first page, it would say something like, we did it, because God, I'm just really corny today. But I really do think that me being a boss and having a show and creating this world is something that my 12-year-old self like kind of knew I would do. But my like 10 years ago self was like, oh no, me? I couldn't do that. And like channeling that 12-year-old self and being like, of course we can do this. We can do this during a pandemic. We can do this, you know, we can do long days, we can do deadlines, we can have a writer's room, we can hire everybody, we can be a boss. It's something that I feel like I did sort of alongside my 12-year-old self. So it would say, diary, we did it.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mason.